Actor Will Smith publicly apologizes to Oscars presenter Chris Rock for what he says was his unacceptable and inexcusable behavior. Yet another strong response to China as the Philippines maintains its position it has full sovereignty over Scarborough Shoal or Bajo de Masinloc. Beijing claims the area is its inherent territory and that Manila should avoid interfering with its affairs in the region. Our Tristan Nadal joins us live from Manila. What do we know so far, Tristan?
Here, the Philippine government has filed another diplomatic protest over the recent actions of the Chinese Coast Guard limiting the movement of a Philippine Coast Guard vessel in Scarborough Shoal. This was confirmed and announced by National Security Advisor and Chairperson of the National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea, Secretary Hermogenes Esperon. But we have yet to receive an official statement from the Department of Foreign Affairs. Esperon says that this incident called close distance maneuvering may be expected because of maritime disputes. His exact words, quote, and we will read this, "It can always happen that the vessels of different countries, especially from the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and other claimant countries, and China, will get into some close encounters simply because we have conflicting claims." When asked on what exactly did the Philippines do over the recent incident in Scarborough, Esperon said, "You can expect, tapos na, nag-file na kami ng diplomatic protest doon. Meron na." He adds the country will continue to beef up presence in the West Philippine Sea, including that of the Coast Guard and Bureau of Fisheries. In the meantime, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin Jr. is bound for China this week for a special ASEAN-China meeting on March 31st to April 3rd. Locsin and counterparts from Indonesia and Thailand will discuss regional and international issues with China. But whether or not recent incidents in the West Philippine Sea would be raised or tackled in the special meeting is still up in the air. Beijing defends its actions in Scarborough Shoal, calling it an inherent territory with sovereign rights and jurisdiction in the area. China adds the Philippines should respect its rights and avoid interfering with the patrol and law enforcement activities of the Chinese Coast Guard. On the other hand, Malacanang reiterates the country has full sovereignty over Scarborough Shoal. Japan has also expressed its support or position in the Scarborough Shoal. It said that any form of coercion or use of force in the region is unacceptable. Back to you, Pia.
Tristan Nadal there reporting. As campaign rallies of presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo drew record-breaking crowds, her daughters are fully aware of the realities on the ground, a sobering reminder that there's so much work to be done. Our Anjo Alimani joins one of Robredo's daughters in her house-to-house campaign.
Po ako ni Leni Robredo, hindi po kami sila. Pasensya na istorbo namin po.
At 7 in the morning, Trisha Robredo is already busy moving from one house to another in Barangay Tandang Sora, Quezon City, bringing her mother closer to the people. A few days ago, the second daughter of presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo gave supporters a reality check that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. They've been heckled while conducting house-to-house campaign.
Siyempre, human din kami. Medyo masakit din sometimes. Pero alam naman natin na hindi sila yung kalaban. So tuloy lang po talaga sa laban. Bigger goal lagi at hand.
Based on pre-election surveys, Robredo is still a distant second behind former Senator Bongbong Marcos. That's why Robredo's daughters are doubling efforts to reach as many people as possible. Conversion, Trisha admits, doesn't happen overnight. Rather, it's a process. But they're not alone in this fight. Volunteers from a nearby church joined Trisha. 100 of them have been regularly and patiently visiting communities for more than a month now.
Okay lang po. Kahit ako, pagod, sige pa rin. Para sa kanya.
Kasi pag siyang manalo, lahat po hanggang laylayan, dala, paangat. Kaya kami po walang bayad.
Nanay Leonilia says she's already decided.
Siya po na sana po maging siya. Siya si Lenny.
Just behind her, a Marcos tarp is displayed.
Lagay lang sila ng lagay. Tabing ko sa ulan ba, init.
Robredo appeals to volunteers not to give up on non-supporters. While it was a hard decision to reach to allow their mom to run again, they're now all in.
Pakiramdam po namin magkakapatid, parang kasalanan na hindi namin siya ipairam ulit kung alam namin na siya yung pinakarapat-dapat naman mamuno ng ating bayan.
Andrew Alimario, CNN Philippines.
On to other presidential candidates. The Nacionalista Party is officially endorsing the tandem of Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte. Marcos was a member of the Nacionalista before joining the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas. The NP is led by businessman Manny Villar and his wife, Senator Cynthia Villar. Their son, former Public Works Secretary Mark Villar, is running on the Marcos-Duterte Senate slate. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno meeting with representatives of Elon Musk's company SpaceX. They discussed the Manila government's acquisition of the so-called Starlink internet broadband, which is the first for any city in Southeast Asia. Moreno plans to put up more than 1,000 satellites in almost 900 villages, more than 100 public schools, and in some hospitals and police stations. Senator Manny Pacquiao also met with SpaceX officials today. They discussed how foreign firms can now enter the country's internet technology market more easily through new amendments in the Public Service Act. Pacquiao previously met with SpaceX officials last January. Meanwhile, Pacquiao says he will be able to recover a bigger portion of the Marcos' ill-gotten wealth as president through his fame as a boxing icon. Pacquiao claims he will be able to persuade institutions that are supposedly keeping some of the family's assets to return them to the Philippine government.
Pag pumupunta ako sa ibang bansa, kilala ko. Di ba? So yun yung siguro isa sa mga advantage ko na as a international figure, respetuhin yung request natin at pakiusap natin para hanapin, halugugin lahat ng mga, di ba?
Presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos could be criminally liable for money laundering. That statement coming from a former commissioner of the Presidential Commission on Good Government. Ruben Carranza says the former senator and his mother Imelda are co-administrators of the estate left by the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos, and that the two are supposedly hiding ill-gotten assets. In 2003, the Supreme Court ruled that the wealth of Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos in excess of their legal income of approximately $304,000 is presumed to be ill-gotten. That amount is now currently worth over 15 million pesos.
The filing of an anti-money laundering complaint must be based on what's called a predicate offense, an offense in which you acquired assets that are ill-gotten that you then try to launder. No? Lalaban mo yan para maging malinis at maitago mo yung marumi niyang pinanggalingan. The predicate offense in this case is corruption. The predicate offense in this case is hoarding and hiding ill-gotten wealth, which is already a finding that's filed under the executory as from 2003. The Anti-Money Laundering Council of the Philippines can actually act on its own, motu proprio, or complainants can file complaints before the Anti-Money Laundering Council to investigate Marcos Jr. for money laundering.
The Marcoses have yet to respond to CNN Philippines' request for comment. Want to know more about where presidential candidates stand on various issues? Catch the Commission on Elections' second presidential debate, where 9 out of the 10 contenders will answer pressing questions on government accountability, foreign relations, safety, and security. That's this Sunday, April 3rd at 7 in the evening. And don't miss out on our pre-debate special, hosted by yours truly at 6:30 in the evening that same night, only here on CNN Philippines. Apart from facing discrimination, people with disabilities and rare health conditions are sometimes neglected and left in the dark by health institutions. Stanley Gaheta sheds light on the situation of the sector on the sidelines. Parents and guardians provided consent and permission to CNN Philippines to share their stories of their children with special needs.
Only a few Filipino children suffer from these rare diseases. Their situation is made worse not only by expensive medication or treatment, but also by a society that discriminates against them.
According to World Health Organization, about 10% of newborns have disabilities. In the Philippines, there are nearly 2,000 babies with Down syndrome per year. Jasmine's daughter Julia is one case. She also has congenital heart disease.
both side ng family namin, ako at ng husband ko, wala pong Down syndrome. Kaya nangangapa kami kung ano ba yon.
Down syndrome is a genetic condition of people born with an extra copy of the 21st chromosome. But Jasmine can't accept that a medical institution can be that tactless about the plight of a PWD.
Meron parents, sabi niya, sa cardio, nabasa ko lang po, Dok, alam niyo po ba, sabi sa husband ko, hindi daw nila masyadong inaasikaso si Down syndrome dahil hindi daw po kabilang sa mundo.
Jasmine looked for organizations, government agencies, and politicians who can extend help for the medical operation of her daughter costing about 800,000 pesos. Angelita looks after her 13-year-old nephew Vincent, who has a mild cerebral palsy, a disorder that affects movement and muscle tone, including posture caused by immature development of the brain.
Yung kabilang part ng katawan niya, left part, talagang weak to the point na hindi niya naihawak. Tapos may mga visible na deformity lalo pag naglalakad yung bata.
Vincent is undergoing a lifelong therapy and has enrolled in a special school for skills learning. He is also suffering from bullying.
Ang pagbubuli po sa akin ay parang pananakit. At tapos, laging pinagsasalitaan ng masama.
Angelita believes less attention is being given to the likes of her nephew.
Pag ganitong sitwasyon, masyadong complex kasi unang-una, pag lumapit ka sa government, pupunta ka sa isang medical institution, ganun. Hindi ganun kadali yung process. Let's say, kukuha ka pa lang ng appointment sa neuropedia o isang specialist. Aabuti ng ilang buwan bago ka mabigyan.
What should the next administration do to further address their needs and lessen their burden on medical requirements? When will majority of us fully understand that persons with disabilities should have their place where humanity resides? Stanley Gate, CNN Philippines.
Officials are taking things one step at a time amid the new normal. The government continues to ramp up vaccinations in areas with low coverage, particularly in the Bangsamoro region. Private schools are appealing for more relaxed rules ahead of their return to physical classes. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Prices at the pump again soared by up to nearly 10 pesos today. Chrissy Dimatulak reports some public transport drivers are taking more trips to make ends meet.
Another beeline for motorists at this service station in Mandaluyong City to beat a new round of fuel price increase at 6 a.m. Motorists say they have no choice but to factor in unpredictable pump prices in their routines.
Nangangamba kami dahil siyempre epektado rin naman, di ba? Kahit sino naman siguro, pagdating ng mga nagkataas yung nagpapanik din sila.
Siyempre hindi masaya, pero wala tayong magagawa eh. Kailangan natin mag-adjust. Kailangan alis na maaga para mabawi yung nawawalang pera dahil sa gas.
In the new round of price increase, the public transport sector takes another hit, since diesel is now more expensive than gasoline. Diesel now sells for 70 pesos per liter, and gasoline at 69 pesos. While public utility drivers have been given a one-time fuel subsidy, they are hoping for a fair hike to cope with rising prices.
Dapat sana itaas po nila kasi talagang mababa yung namin. Wala kami maiuwi, halos pamilya. Kahit wala na po yung ayuda, basta may taas lang yung pamasahe.
Kahit hindi na magtaas, babaan na lang po ang presyo ng diesel. Oo, kasi makaka-accommodate yan lahat yan eh. Ma-afford na kami lahat yan.
Transport regulators recently denied the provisional 1 peso fare hike petition of transport groups. They say there must be a balance between the interests of commuters and the transport sector. Meanwhile, the main petition seeking for a 5 peso increase in the minimum fare is still pending. As a stopgap move to ease commuter concerns, the government carries out this week free rides at MRT3 and EDSA bus carousel. But one transport group says only a few benefit from the free trips.
May libreng sakay, pero merong hindi kasama. Pero po, ang pag-disburse po ng LTFRB, inaabot po ng buwan bago kami makasingil o bago kami mabayaran. Baon na po kami sa utang sa mga gasolinahan.
The government is giving subsidy worth 6,500 pesos each to the more than 300,000 drivers and operators nationwide. Chrissy De Matulak, CNN Philippines.
Health Undersecretary Mario Rosario Vergere says new cases may drop to as low as 70 per day next month. Vergere explains this is based on several factors, including vaccination rate, waning immunity of vaccines, and pre-pandemic level mobility. She says projections may change if other risk factors come into play, like potential new variants.
Kung ano yung current mobility patterns at saka yung compliance to minimum public health standards at saka vaccinations natin ay pareho lang. By April 30, nationally, we will have daily cases of 70 hanggang 268. Pero kapag bumaba ang compliance, aabot ang ating national daily cases by 670.
The country remains at minimal risk for COVID-19, but the DOH is monitoring the Cordillera region, where there was a slight increase in the positivity rate. Meanwhile, the Bangsamoro region still has the lowest vaccine coverage in the country. This prompted the government to conduct special vaccinations. But as Caroline Bonkin tells us, the region is still facing hurdles in inoculating people.
The special COVID-19 vaccination days in the Bangsamoro region starts on Tuesday. But unlike in other regions, there are hardly inoculations in some areas we visited, like Datu Odin Sinsuat and Cotabato City. Lack of manpower, financial and logistical resources slow down the immunization here. A BARM Health Ministry official says they have no dedicated COVID vaccinators. That's why health workers can only administer vaccines on either this Wednesday or Thursday to give way to other health services.
They are actually handling 44 programs of the Department of Health in one person. That is why hindi naman po pwede na isakripisyo po natin yung kanilang other trabaho.
Security is also a concern.
Some areas are not really going on an 8 to 5 vaccination. May mga lugar na very hard to reach areas na hindi ka pwede magabihan kasi these places are sometimes infested with yung mga lawless elements.
Some have to travel 16 hours to reach far-flung areas. All BARM provinces have only vaccinated below half the target, with Davao del Sur at the bottom, with only 21% coverage. Getting the right message to people, especially in remote areas, is a priority here. We've talked to some unvaccinated residents. Most of them don't want to go on camera, but many tell us they're afraid of the side effects they read on social media or hear from friends and neighbors.
Natatakot lang, ma'am. Yung makukuha ko, baka makukuha akong sakit dyan sa bakuna.
So yung iba, nababalitaan ko na
maraming namamatay. Yung mga kapitbahay namin, balita nila na may namamatay.
By Raisa, her parents and 9 siblings are all unvaccinated. Despite explaining that no vaccine-related deaths have been reported in the Philippines, by Raisa says she will only get the shot if her siblings get it first or if it becomes a requirement for in-person classes. Despite these challenges, BARM health officials hope to vaccinate 86,000 people until Thursday. They have the usual vaccination sites and conduct house-to-house visits, but they will focus their resources in areas with the lowest vaccine coverage. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
The province of Cebu also holding a special vaccination campaign today until March 31st. You're seeing on your screens the 12 priority areas for the rollout. Health workers are going house to house to achieve a target of 40,000 doses. Officials aim to focus on senior citizens in Cebu, which has the lowest vaccine coverage for that group at almost 40%. With vaccinations and the downgrade of alert levels, limited in-person classes are back. But for some private schools, shifting from virtual to physical is a challenge because of requirements set amid the pandemic. AC Nichols has that story.
6th grader Zabril Pan goes to a private school in Mandaluyong City. Classes are still fully online, but he cannot wait to attend in-person classes.
Pag online class, mahirap. Mahirap focus kung naglalag yung teacher.
Department of Education data shows only about 200 private schools have started face-to-face classes. A group of private schools hopes for an easier application process. As per guidelines, schools have to go through a validation process to hold in-person classes. The DepEd Safety Assessment tool lists requirements, such as the installation of hand-washing facilities, that teachers should be fully vaccinated.
We need to submit everything first, and it has to be checked ilan lang ba ang empleyado sa DepEd that are also in charge of doing this, and considering that they also need to do other things sa division and sa region. So I think it slows down the process.
Most private schools will not hold in-person classes until next school year, according to the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations of the Philippines, or COCOPEA. Some issues need to be discussed with parents.
Mga parents ng ibang bata, syempre, tinatanong din yun, lahat ba ng papasok ay vaccinated? Kasi kung hindi, they wouldn't also volunteer. And at the same time, what do we do with those unvaccinated? Do we require them to just submit a negative RT-PCR or antigen, and at whose cost?
Education officials are now finalizing new guidelines for the expanded implementation of face-to-face classes to align with the current situation. The safety assessment tool will be made easier for schools to comply. Economic managers, meantime, are pushing to fully resume in-person classes, saying it would be a huge help in boosting the economy. Parents have mixed reactions about this. Some, like Zoila Pablo, are in favor.
Sabi ko nga, online na nga lang, hindi pa kayo pumapasok. Sabi nila, Mama, ayaw namin ng ganyan kasi hindi kami natututo. Puro parang pandaraya lang ba? Kasi pwede daw silang magtanong sa magulang. Minsan ako gumagawa.
While others are not comfortable sending their kids back to the classrooms just yet.
Di pa rin sure, baka mamaya biglang mag-increase na naman yung COVID sa bansa.
Simply put, the DepEd believes blended learning is the future of education. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
Coming up, Will Smith has apologized to the Academy, his fellow nominees, and now the comedian himself, whom the actor slapped at the Oscars. And grim news for BTS fans. Another member tests positive for COVID. Details after the break.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back. Actor Will Smith apologizes to Chris Rock after yesterday's shocking slap on the Oscar stage. In an online post, Will says the joke about his wife, Jada's medical condition, her alopecia, caused him to react emotionally, but that his actions were not indicative, he said, of the man he wants to be. The Academy says it condemns what Will did, adding that it has begun a formal review of the incident where it will explore further action. K-pop updates now. Jungkook of BTS tests positive for COVID-19 upon arriving in Las Vegas for their Grammy gig. The group's agency says Jungkook has a mild sore throat and is being treated while in self-quarantine. All 7 BTS members have contracted the virus in the past 4 months. The chart-topping group is scheduled to perform at the Grammy Awards on Monday, Philippine time, but Jungkook's participation is still up in the air depending on COVID regulations in Las Vegas. Well, speaking of BTS, another group joins them and Super M as the only Korean artists to top the Billboard 200 albums chart. Stray Kids landed at #1 with their first ever entry on the list, Ordinary. They also had the highest pure album sales in the US this year at 103,000 copies. Well, speaking of milestones, Taylor Swift is adding another honor to the list, this time from New York University. NYU will award the singer with an honorary doctorate of fine arts at the class of 2022's graduation ceremony on May 18th. Swift will also deliver the commencement address. This is not the first time the university recognized Swift's influence. NYU has offered a course on her work. And that is it for now. Join me again on Politics as usual from 8 to 9 p.m. tonight. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.